Hello and welcome back to the series on the T, on what it's like to be a Christian virgin, waiting for marriage, specifically a woman. I am 24 years old to be 25 in about, 4 months or so? And this video, of all the videos I've ever posted on this channel, I was the most reluctant to record for the reason that it felt the most worldly of all the videos I've ever recorded and posted, because this is a ministry channel, I am a Christian woman. The purpose of this ministry is to be an altar unto the Lord. So for whatever I post here is intended to be for his glory. So when I felt inspired to make and record this video, I talked to God for a long time about it, because on the surface, I don't really know how it's going to be taken. But when I analyzed my own heart and I thought about my daughter someday, if God gives me a daughter someday, this is something that, regarding why to keep one's virginity until marriage as a woman, I will absolutely tell her. And so even though it's unconventional for my ministry, I'm still going to share it because we're talking about fruit. The purpose of this series for me was to hold myself accountable to keep my virginity until wedlock, and share what I've learned along the way about the value of doing so, specifically as a Christian woman. So the title of this episode is Talulah Riley. I did some research because I shared in the episode Patriarchy is Biblical, and before that, I think at least once, that I was finding more space for me to breathe, more acceptance of my way of life among more conservative platforms, and platforms where patriarchy was accepted and promoted. And something that I heard among conservative podcasters was conversations on men like Elon Musk. And my mom mentioned this person to me at least once before, I think. And I had no clue who this was. I'm not into celebrities and stuff like that. I don't really watch TV. Like the news and stuff, that's not my thing. I try to live an off-grid life. But when I did research to find out who this was, I understood that Elon Musk is considered like the richest dude in the world right now. He's a trillionaire. And I came across a piece of information about one of his ex-wives named Talulah Riley. And upon digging, I found out that this woman was a virgin, and it was alleged that Elon Musk pursued Talulah Riley for marriage specifically because she was a virgin. And I've been talking in the last set of episodes, I would say, about my bad experiences with female fake friendships that consisted of me and non-virgin women. Some of them who honestly did what people call virtue signaling and lied about being virgins because they were in the church. And, that's not, especially if you go to a very conservative church, that's not socially accepted. I could always spot a born-again virgin who was lying about being a virgin by her attitude, because even though she would virtue signal and dress very modestly and, alleged to be chaste, she would be very cutthroat, very insulting and catty in her behavior towards me. And I would never be able to understand why until after the fact it would come out that she had a 304 pass. And that put her at odds with me, at least in her mind. So this is what I would tell my daughter about what I found out about Talulah Riley, Elon Musk's ex-wife, having been allegedly a virgin at the time that they met. Because sadly, I have to be clear that I am a girl who my main priority in a future spouse is that I marry God's choice for me. I've made that clear in these videos. It's why I've chosen to willfully be single, because I have not, in my personal prayer life and talking to my dad, my parents, my pastor, personal accountability, believed I've received any release from God to pursue any romantic relationship with anyone God hasn't already told me to, right? So for that reason, I need to be very clear that my priorities aren't like, I don't even want to say that, but basically like women in the world. Women in the world want money. They want a guy to fly them out. They want luxury. They want provision, but not provision to build their own homes. They want provision so they can have a very materialistic lifestyle. My priority is being a homemaker, getting married young, if possible, if it's God's will for me, and having children and building my own home. So the best thing for me, the ideal for me, would be to marry another virgin. And most of the guys in the world who are what other guys consider high status, they aren't virgins. And so for me, that's a deal breaker if God hasn't explicitly told me, yeah, that guy's the one for you. So I want to be very clear about that before I go on any further. But sadly, in my life of talking to different guys, having male friends, and honestly observing the men in my own family, and honestly even having experienced romantic disappointments, I learned through honestly heartbreak that men, when it comes to other men, they value status, and a very powerful way that men try to gain status is through money and wealth. Even among the men who claim to not care about stuff like that, I have noticed just from observing the men in my family that it gets under a man's skin when his competitor or rival is wealthier than he is. And so even though that's not my priority when it comes to men, I've had wealthy men approach me with offers for courtship, and I've rejected it because in my prayer life, I have not received a release from God to just try to be with a man and try to make things work because of his money, okay? But I learned the hard way that men do value their own financial position in society. They value their status in this way. This is one of the ways they value, but it's honestly a very powerful way they do. And I have experienced even a guy choosing, that I actually was interested in the past, choosing not to move forward because he was not where he wanted to be financially in his life. And so that embarrassed me at the time, because I consider myself very much like what people call a lover girl, like in the sense of I'm the type who absolutely wants to marry for love. But life taught me that guys, when they respect a woman, when they like a woman, when they're genuinely invested in a long-term like relationship and the potentiality of marriage to a woman, they actually really care about whether they're able to provide for you or not. And I had to learn that through heartbreak. So that's the foundation I'm saying before I go any further into this video as to why I would be talking about Elon Musk, right? Because this brings me to the same way that I just talked about how men see each other like on a larger scale and how status matters to men. Learning about Talulah Riley having been a virgin, allegedly, at the time she met Elon Musk, who married her, shed light to me on my past experiences with other women in friendships and even professional relationships. Because in the same way that men, even though it's not openly spoken about, are sizing each other up, and there is like rivalry and competition among men, among women, that exists too. And honestly, that's even in the Bible. Female rivalry is sadly shows up in the Bible in more than one place. And this is another area where I had to learn the hard way to have thick skin and use biblical discernment before going into female friendships. But it's also part of the reason that I made the decision to stop having close friendships with women who didn't share my background of being a virgin waiting for marriage, because the fruit was so bad. But this is the part that that's the reason I started making this video. This feels so awkward to say, which is why I've been rambling. God, I need your grace, because this feels really shallow, is the bottom line to say. But what I essentially learned from my experience is that women, even in the church, are shallow. Finding women who are genuinely humble and not walking after their flesh in terms of sizing themselves and each other up based on very fleshly things is very, very rare. And this is the lesson that I will share with my daughter. This feels so awkward. This feels so awkward. Born again virgins, the ones that I was personally friends with as women, with me, they were catty, they were backbiting, they made backhanded compliments. Whether they were the ones who were open about their sexual past or the ones who lied, their demeanor was the same. They were competitive, catty, they made backhanded compliments. They were very fake friends. And it got to the point, and I say this so transparently because my mother, who like me was a virgin, well, she was a virgin until she met my dad, but they didn't wait for marriage. I'm waiting for marriage, right? My mother, because in this regard, she was like me, that she waited longer in life, she could spot when a woman was being catty to me because she was a Jezebel, is the bottom line. And she would warn me, this girl is wearing a mask. This girl is fake. This girl is, you cannot trust this woman. And so this is what I learned. I didn't understand, based on what I just shared about Talulah Riley having been a virgin and this super wealthy CEO pursuing her specifically and marrying her specifically because she was a virgin. This is something that women, generally speaking, among religious and Christian spheres, they don't talk about. It's one of those things that's hush hush. And if you were to even bring it up in a casual conversation, they would feel so insulted and be like they become sassy and start, going into catty mode. It would start a cat fight, right? But what I would tell my daughter is this. That right there, that Talulah Riley having apparently been a virgin when Elon Musk met her and he chose her because she was a virgin, sheds light on what happened in the Bible. In the Old Testament, men valued virginity in women they married, to the point where not being a virgin when a man took you to be his wife was a stoning offense. And King Solomon in Song of Songs also expressed to a valued virginity in the women that he dealt with. And again, before I go any further, it just feels appropriate to say that I don't support King Solomon love in terms of polygamy. I support Adam and Eve love, the way it was originally designed by God in the Garden of Eden, which is why that's my goal. Marry another virgin, build our own home, never get divorced, grow old, have great grandkids, and, go to the Lord whenever it's his will. That's my goal. Okay. But when it came to other women who were not virgins. I didn't understand because I was young and innocent, and these girls knew that and were bitter, that women, even if they don't say it in the church, understand that being promiscuous, being a hoe, being for the streets is not a good look for any woman. And if you, in this society full of hookup culture, decide to be a woman who is honestly set apart from the world by choosing to keep it all shut, keep it all locked up, as Song of Songs 4 says, keep it locked up, keep those clothes on until you're married. These women who have been for the streets and in the world have such a deep inner awareness of what their past did to their reputation, to their romantic prospects, that it makes them nasty as hell. And this is what I would tell my daughter. When you grow up, if you choose to be chaste, if you choose to value your virginity, understand that if you lose friends in the process, if you see backstabbing women who turn on you, who are catty, who act to your face and say to your face that they have your best interests at heart, but that's not the fruit that their words and advice produce in your life, understand that they are trying to derail you because they understand that their past and their decision to compromise led to bad fruit and lasting consequences for them when it came to the romantic sphere. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this is another thing I'm gonna be honest about. A man with a bunch of money is not the best thing a woman who saved herself for marriage can have. If he is ran through, if he's unfaithful, if he is polygamous, if he's got stuff going on behind the scenes, if he has diseases, what my mother would say as a teenager, venereal diseases, if he's brimming with venereal diseases, that's what my mom would say when I was a teenager when she'd warn me a guy was trash, right? That's not a high value man for a woman who saved herself for marriage. If you save yourself for marriage and then you choose a man who is so low quality in character that you end up getting divorced, I consider you a very unwise woman. But in terms of, did I just hear my mom? I think she just laughed again. I think I woke my mom up. But anyway, thank you God. Thank you God for being with me. But if you, that made me forget what I was gonna say, man. But I'm gonna say that Talulah Riley, I'll say this. Over my 24 years, I have gotten to witness firsthand many women make stupid decisions that had lasting consequences, destroyed not just their own lives, but also their children's lives, made them single mothers, sometimes homeless. Talulah Riley could have made worse decisions as a virgin woman than marrying a man who was financially able to provide for her the way that he was. She could have made worse decisions. And for that reason, I still share it, because another thing I've learned about born-again virgin women, like the ones that I have been speaking about in this video, is that they're gold diggers. They are really shallow when it comes to money, and stuff like that actually matters to them, which is why they were catty towards me. Because these girls... Hey, Mom. Are you gonna say hi?
No.
Okay. These women, I love God, y'all. These women are actually gold diggers. And if I have a son, let me tell you, I'm gonna warn my son about this too. These born-again virgin 304s, these grifters, the women who lived in the world and got snatched out of the fire, and they have that kind of attitude, because let me tell you, not every woman in the church who had a sexual past has treated me like this. Not all of them. But most of them have. And those women are gold diggers. Let me tell you something, and that's why they were so catty towards me. Even though I was totally traditional, I want to fall in love and get married to my first love and grow old together. That was my only priority, because they were seeing it that way. They were looking at their romantic prospects in terms of who's the greatest catch I can pull? You know, very shallow expectations. But honestly, I learned a lot just from the scrolling I did researching Talulah Riley with that. And it honestly, even though I consider that marriage that ended in divorce something that happened in the world and not in the church, it still was a reminder to me as to why to value my virginity and keep waiting for marriage. Not so I can get, you know, a rich man, but because it means that what I'm doing has such lasting value that when it comes to my friendships with other women, if I see a woman who's side-eyeing me and being catty and not being a good friend simply because of my decision to be a virgin, let me tell you, that says something more about her than it does about me. And that's honestly the point of this video. That's the lesson that I needed to learn years ago. That would have saved me so much heartache, emotionally led decision-making, peer pressure, maybe even loss of friendships because I would have chosen better friends in the first place. So that's the full extent of this video. God's will be done over it. And shout out to my mom for making it perfect. She does not like being on camera. But yeah.